Are you looking to get on the road to your dream career? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Mentor Select Podcast with your host, Derek Phillips. Always stay up to date on social media at Mentor Select and online at mentorselect.com. Here's your host of the Mentor Select Podcast, Derek Phillips.
Welcome to episode 73 of the Mentor Select Podcast. I am thrilled that you joined us today. We are officially 1 week away from Christmas. Hope that you all finish your Christmas shopping and just ready to have a fun-filled holidays with your family and friends, and hope that you get all that you asked Santa for. Today we have a phenomenal interview with our guest mentor, Rachel Smith. She was a pilot for over 30 years, retiring from United Airlines. And Rachel is going to share with us just her experience of being one of the first female pilots for a commercial airline. Rachel has some really exciting stories to share, just her experiences flying all over the world. So I'm not going to keep you waiting any longer. Let's get to our interview. So today we have Rachel Smith on the Mentor Select Podcast. How are you, Rachel?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
I'm glad to have you. Well, Rachel, on the Mentor Select Podcast, we like to get to know our guest mentors better. So you mind telling us something that most people don't know about you?
Well, how about that I flew a Boeing 777 into Paris, London, and Frankfurt.
All right. That sounds like that's a big plane, huh?
Yes, it was exciting, to actually see the Eiffel Tower and go into Amsterdam. And those were exciting times.
I can imagine. My wife and I just went to Paris in March. That was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Very pretty.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It is very beautiful. Very romantic city, certainly.
It is.
And that was her first time in Europe, so it was a great experience.
Uh-huh.
Indeed. So when you say you flew a Boeing, not flew on, you actually were the pilot of the plane.
Yes, I was. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Can you tell us more about that? How did you become a pilot? What was that process?
Well, when I was a child, we used to fly places, and I always loved flying. And I grew up in New York, and I would actually go to JFK to just watch airplanes take off. I never knew I'd be a pilot, though. I thought about being a flight attendant. But I at the time, now I'm 63, I thought maybe that would be a dead end, although I found out it's not, because flight attendants can go all the way up to vice president now.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So I took a private pilot license my last semester of college, and my instructor was a World War II pilot.
Okay.
And he's the one that put it into my mind to become a pilot. And I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to be at that time. So I looked into it, and I went down to flight safety in Vero Beach, Florida, and I got all my ratings. And then I got a 727 flight engineer rating up in Atlanta. And then I flight instructed to build hours. I went to my first commuter airline in Camden, Arkansas, and then I came down to Royal Airlines in Shreveport.
Okay.
Because they have, the name of the game is you have to keep flying bigger and more complex aircraft. Mm-hmm. So in Arkansas, that we were just flying reciprocating engines, maybe 4 to 6 passengers. So when I got to Royal, they were flying turboprops, and that was about 20 passengers. And then I met my husband, who was also a pilot, and we ended up applying and getting hired to United Airlines. And we were the first married couple that they ever had hired.
That's cool.
And, yeah, it was. And we're pretty opposite in what we like. If he was driving cars, he likes a sports car.
Okay.
I like a Lexus. So he went into the 727 and 737. He likes kind of up and down domestic, fly by the seat of your pants. And I like the big birds and going international.
Okay.
I just, to me, that was like cool, really romantic and cool, and just to travel all over the world. So I started out on the 747 as a flight engineer, and then I went to the 737 as a co-pilot, and then I went to the Boeing 777. And I flew all over the Pacific and then all over Europe and South America also, and Mexico and Canada, Asia.
Wow. So how many countries have you been to?
I've never counted.
Quite a few, huh?
In the Pacific, like we went to Manila, Singapore, Bangkok, of course, Hawaii, Auckland, Australia, Hawaii, and then Beijing. We went all over the Pacific.
Okay.
And it was really cool. I flew out of San Francisco and Chicago and New York. I had 3 different bases.
So was the Boeing 777 the largest airplane that you flew?
Well, probably the 747
Okay.
was the larger, but the 777 it was 2 engines, and I think we had about 230 passengers on that. We've been retired for quite a few years. So I retired in 2004.
Okay. Well, as far as the whole process of training, getting your license and everything to become a pilot, how long would you say it took from the time you started to the time you were able to fly, like the 777 and the 747?
Well, for me personally, I was lucky. My dad helped me with the flight school. So okay. I did pay my living expenses, but he paid for the actual flying. So I went through flight safety was what you call Part 141 school.
Okay.
Went there with a private pilot license, and I got my instrument, commercial, instrument instructor, multi-engine instructor, single engine seaplane, multi-engine seaplane, in about, believe it or not, like 9 months. I mean, wow. All I did was eat, sleep, and I waitressed at night, and I worked really hard. I just put my nose to the grindstone, and then went up to Atlanta, and the 727 flight engineer rating took, I think, about a month.
Okay.
And then I flight instructed for about a year. And then I went to Camden for 4 months on the small airplanes as a co-pilot. And then I got hired. You got to understand, at the time I was going in, women were just starting to get in.
Okay.
So when I came down to Royal, they literally said, "When can you be here?" So I got hired right away. So really, it just depends on the person. It depends how, if you have the money to do it, mm-hmm. how fast you can build your hours.
Okay. I
was single at the time I was coming up, and I put my nose to the grindstone. I went as fast and as hard as I could.
You're determined. I
was very, very ambitious. I really just was single-minded that I wanted to fly in the major airlines.
Okay.
So, and I put out hundreds of resumes and to get, because it's hard when you are a flight instructor to get to your first multi-engine aircraft. Mm-hmm. It's kind of that thing where you need experience to get the job. You can't get the job unless you.
That's yeah.
But I just kept. I was a person that I would go places without being invited. I would just go. I'd put my suit on and get my resume, and that's how I got the job at Royal. I just came down on my days off, and I walked in and said, "Hi, I just wanted to say hello and say I'm interested in being a pilot here." And it just so happens they had decided they were going to hire some women.
Wow.
And so,
perfect timing.
Yeah. My dad always said success is when preparation and opportunity meet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You have to make your opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, that you did. And what I find incredible about your story is, like you say, you're always fascinated with planes. And originally you were thinking about becoming a flight attendant, but you mentioned one of your professors who was a former World War II pilot actually kind of inspired you to aspire to be a pilot. Can you tell us more about that? Just the impact he had on you choosing to become a pilot?
Well, it was really strange. I was, 21 or something, and he probably was in his mid to late 70s.
Oh, wow.
And he had been a fighter pilot in World War II. He had gone behind enemy lines and stole a Messerschmitt and flew it out. And he was really quite a guy. And we just hit it off. He told me at the time, he said, "Did you ever think about being a commercial pilot?" And I said, "No, I never did. I've thought about being a flight attendant. I just assumed like military guys did that, and I never thought of it." And he said, "Well, you're tall enough," because I'm 5'10". He said, you have 20/20 vision. I actually had 20/15 vision. He said, you're graduating with a college degree and you love it and you're good at it. He said, you ought to consider this because they're going to start hiring women. And if you do this, you're going to be in the catbird seat.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, what a cool idea. So I went home, and I was the youngest of 5 children. Okay. So I was graduating that June. And my dad was really like getting ready to be done with us. You know? And so I presented it like a business opportunity because my dad was a businessman. Okay. And I said, "Okay, Dad, I would like to become a pilot. Here's how much it will cost. Here's how long it will take. And here's what I can make doing." He was kind of like, he actually was, part of him wanted me to just go to work, you know. And then the thing about it is he had wanted to be a pilot in World War II, but he was colorblind. So he couldn't. Okay. So he was kind of intrigued with this idea. And so he talked to the pastor about it, and the pastor said, "Well, you know, if you can afford it, then give her a chance." So that's how that happened. And
the rest is history.
Yes. Yes.
That's awesome. So what was your experience being like one of the first woman commercial pilots? What was that experience like, being at the forefront of that?
Well, you know, I grew up with 3 brothers and a sister, and I was always close with my dad and my 3 brothers. So I you know, didn't feel like I was going to have any trouble working with men. And pilots are real interesting. They do a lot of different stuff. I mean, some of them are accountants. They do all this. Some of them do woodworking. A lot of them have little airplanes. They're just, you know, and the thing is, you usually fly with different people, so you're constantly meeting and learning new things. Okay. A lot of them travel. They're into motorcycles. They're usually pretty physically fit, so they'll be into skiing, scuba diving.
It's pretty diverse, huh?
It is. It really is. So it was fun. And then of course the traveling was so cool. It's not quite as glamorous as you might think, because we usually left about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and you fly all night long. Right. And then you get into a place like Paris. And then what we try to do is just sleep till about noon. By the time you get to the hotel, it's about 8:30. So you want to sleep till noon, get up and tour. Okay. And then have your dinner and go back to bed maybe at 8 or 9 p.m. so that you'll be able to sleep all night. Because the next day you leave like about 8 in the morning. So when you went to sleep and that alarm rang after 3.5 hours, I'm telling you, it was like, it was so hard to get up. And you just really wanted to stay in bed so bad, but you knew and I did it once or twice, if you slept through, then you'd wake up about 5 p.m. like, what? And then you couldn't sleep that night, and then so you had to learn how to deal with all this, that kind of thing. But we had augmentation. There would be one captain and 3 co-pilots. And then there was a bunk room. And so all the pilots are there for takeoff and landing. Mm-hmm. And then 2 go back at a time during the flight. Okay. And then you'd usually have one shorter break and a longer break. And that's how it would work. It took me a while when I retired to just be able to sleep all night long. Wow. So it's a fascinating career.
It sounds like it.
And it was really good being married to a pilot because we really understood each other.
You're right.
And understood just about the whole thing. Because when you're married to a civilian, they have a different view. They think it's this big glamorous thing, but they don't understand all the things. What happens is you'll get weather systems and there's the long delays and you might be sitting there for 5 hours. And
so it's not all fun and games. It's actually work.
But it is fascinating. The wonderful thing is the beauty of it, seeing the northern lights when we would fly up over Canada, going to Asia. I loved flying into London and Paris. It was like really cool. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this,
Yeah,
it's really awesome.
In the lead category, not many people can say they did it.
It was really, I just was like, I can't believe I'm here. It was very cool.
That's great. Something else you mentioned I think is very important for people to understand is how you said you would go places without being invited and just how you showed that initiative.
Right.
Tell us more about the impact that had.
Oh, it just completely opened up everything. I don't know where I got that exactly, but I just I had this little suit. Back then, the women wore these little blouses that had bows, and it was navy blue, and I had a little briefcase. And I would just, on my days off, I would get dressed real nice, and I would drive to major airlines, and I would just walk in, and because I just felt like if you go there and you have your resume and they have a face, they meet you.
Right. Make that connection.
And it's really makes a big difference. I just got into so many different places like that and met people and networked. And like I said, I literally had like a box of envelopes sending resumes out to all the airlines in the country. And I would update them.
Okay.
First, I would do the applications, then I would update them like every 3 or 4 months on how many hours I had at this point.
Right.
And you want to keep your file active, so that's always on someone's desk.
Okay.
And it works.
Yeah, that's a good tip. And I think with technology today, people get comfortable with just sending emails or just being so impersonal, but showing up is half the battle. You show up, you make that connection, and put a face with the name. Mm-hmm. So really, really good advice that still applies today. I know some of my greatest opportunities have come with just showing initiative and showing up, networking with people, allowing them to get to know me.
You just have to stand out somehow. You have to come out of that crowd.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So Rachel, clearly we know now that you're passionate about flying and planes. Yeah. You did that. You retired from United Airlines in 2004?
Yes.
2004. Mm-hmm. Okay. So since then, now you're retired. How are you following your passions now? What are some causes that you're involved with? Well,
I have to tell you, which will be surprising probably to your listeners. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I'm also a recovering anorexic bulimic. And I belong to Overeaters Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. And I'm also in Toastmasters, which has been wonderful. That really, because I was actually a little afraid to speak in public.
Okay.
And then I go to church, which I love church and Bible study. But I'm very passionate about recovery. And right now where I'm going, the reason I joined Toastmasters is because being a female pilot, people are always wanting me to tell my story. I got mad about that in myself. I thought, this is ridiculous. Because I have 24 years of sobriety, and I have...
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you, praise God. This God and the 12 steps and
Right.
fellowship. I just thought, I've got to get over this because there's people I can help, and I've got to get over this fear because I may help save someone's life.
Absolutely.
So in August of this year, I joined Toastmasters, and I am doing that like I did my flying. I am really committed, and I speak every third week.
Okay.
And I always take a role at the meeting, and we've had speech contests here, and we had the fall conclave, which is where I met you. So I just keep pushing myself to do this. And believe it or not, in certain kind of way, it's almost as hard as flying. I mean, flying, of course, was, a lot more schoolwork and
right.
But I think as far as the inner fortitude and it takes a lot out of me to get up and speak. It's getting easier. And I am going to be speaking at AA on December 14th. And everyone can't wait. They're like, oh, I want to hear your story, because they've been wanting to hear it for a couple of years. I was able to kind of skirt it. And so finally, I had just come back from a Toastmaster speech, and I saw someone at Subway, of all places. And I was telling him that I was in Toast. So he said, hey, by the way, you want to speak December 14th? I was like, oh, okay.
No turning back now.
Yeah. So, well, I think it was a God thing, because the other times, for one reason or another, I'd be out of town or it didn't work. And this time I was in town. So they say in AA, when you're asked to do something, you pretty much don't refuse unless you're sick or something. So I just thought, well, I think God thinks it's time for me to speak. So I will do that. And I'm really hoping to inspire people. And I just think AA is such a wonderful program. I came up in a dysfunctional home like many of us.
Right. Can relate to that.
Bless their hearts. I loved them, and there was love. But, there was problems. And the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has really helped me to where I can say gratefully that today I'm as happy as I've ever been in my life, and I have a good life and good marriage, good home. And it's wonderful to be happy.
Yeah.
It's so great.
What do you think the key to happiness is from your experience?
Well, God is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And giving and getting out of myself. The prayer of St. Francis of Assisi at the very end, I love where it says, where I may not seek so much to be comforted as to comfort others, and not seek to be understood as to understand others, and not seek to be loved as to love others. And grant, it is by self-forgetting that I find, it is by forgiving that I'm forgiven, and it is by dying to self that I'm born to eternal life. And I think eternal life is here on earth. It begins here. So it's what I'm finding out after years in program is it's really about getting out of myself and giving to others. And yet, it doesn't mean that I don't do self-care. It's not like I am, because I went through a whole codependent thing where I was wearing myself out, taking care of my brothers and sister. And they have this concept in Al-Anon called staying in your hula hoop. So in other words, I have to take care of what I have to do, which is eat right, exercise,
right,
get enough sleep, do my housework, my chores, make my speeches. So when I'm doing all those things, then I'm not looking to other people to make me happy. I'm happy because I'm doing right and I'm living right. And then from there, I'm filled up where I love to listen to people and their stories and show compassion to them. And I'll tell you another really big thing I've learned over the last couple of years, which is huge, is the way I talk to myself.
Okay.
I go to counseling, and my counselor said, I would say things to myself that were horrible that I would never say to anyone. Just all those bad things, stupid, ugly.
Degrading ourselves. Yeah.
And now she taught me, she said, don't take that lying down. She goes, refute those and say the opposite. And I started doing that a couple of years ago. And what a difference. I mean, I think just not having someone beat me over the head all the time.
Right.
Now I'll say, no, I'm not listening to that. I'm a child of God. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. God loves me. He doesn't make junk. I'm a good person. All that kind of stuff. And I just
Those positive affirmations.
Yeah, because I used to be very, very hard on myself. And so that's a big part of it. And and I have to say having a wonderful husband is good too. My husband is a great guy. We've been together 38 years.
Wow.
And
awesome.
As they say, that's not my fault. He's very committed. He just has loved me and been there through thick and thin. And he's a godsend. So
yeah. And
then he told me, he said he held up, we have a puppy dog. We have a golden doodle. And we love dogs. And they say you can't buy happiness, but you can buy a puppy. And that's about as close to it as you can get.
I agree. They'll love you unconditionally.
They are wonderful. I love dogs. I really do.
I think that's something a lot of people can relate to as far as that negative self-talk, that inner talk where they're putting ourselves down and just low self-esteem. That certainly is a valuable tip she gave in terms of just reminding ourselves that God created us, didn't create junk, and just how powerful we are. So
yes.
That's something a lot of people can relate to, certainly.
And when I was at this last conference at Toastmasters we met at, and I was watching different people when they spoke, through the education seminars and everything. People come in all sizes, shapes, forms. And it just was an epiphany to me. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, after 2 minutes, it didn't even matter anymore what they looked like. It was like what they were saying. Yeah,
what their message is.
And so I was like, so it doesn't matter, it's like, get over this, accept yourself and speak the message, because because all that stuff is holding back the message of hope and love that people need, So I just now I'm on it. I'm like, I'm not listening to you anymore.
Yeah. And indeed, something you mentioned earlier, as far as saying getting out of myself in terms of, yes, like I said, it's about the message. And when we're focused on ourselves, then that's distracting from the message.
That's right.
And people need to hear it. It can save their lives. It can save their marriages, their career, just by hearing other people's story of inspiration and hitting rock bottom and recovering and just of hope. So
yes,
yeah, that's great. Awesome.
I'm very grateful. It's not just Thanksgiving. I'm grateful all the time just to be alive and I'm grateful to know the secret of happiness now,
Yeah.
And so it's good.
That was a fantastic interview with airline pilot, retired Rachel Smith. She gave us a lot of great advice and just her very cool stories. I really enjoyed hearing about them and just all the things that she's working on now in her retirement, as far as with AA and with Overeaters Anonymous and Toastmasters. She's doing a lot of great things, continuing to serve her community, and that's just remarkable. Be sure to reach out to Rachel Smith if you want to know more about becoming a pilot or just any other projects that she's working on that you may be interested in. On that note, we'll be back next week with another remarkable guest mentor.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Mentor Select podcast, helping you identify and follow your passions. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit mentorselect.com and Mentor Select on social media. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review. We'll catch you next time.